give you the report from the 13th National Conference that we had this past week. It was held at Messiah College out in Grantham, Pennsylvania. Conference convened around 1 o'clock Wednesday afternoon in the beautiful Hospitaller Chapel to have there on campus. We had a communion service, and then Bishop Hill preached a sermon reminding us about the time that Jesus had with his disciples before going to the cross, and how he comforted them, how he prayed for them, and as he prayed for them, we see that he prayed for us today also. And what was his emphasis in that prayer and his comforting to them was about unity, to be one. And of course, this was very fitting going into the business sessions there for the next several days. A very fitting reminder of us about the decisions that were going to have to be made at this time, that we just remain united in our decisions. And that was his prayer and our prayer, and I would say that the prayers were definitely answered as we went through the business sessions, and the conference members seem to be united in the vision that we have for the future. And then it was back across the parking lot in the rain. I had a nice shower there Wednesday morning. It was pouring while we were in the chapel, but until we got outside and walked across to the auditorium, walking through a little bit of rain to get back to the auditorium where all the business conference would take place. The first thing that we always have is the bishop delivering the Episcopal address. There are copies available. I would encourage you to read them. It's a long address that he gives to us, but very much appreciated and very well received. We talked about how God is at work in the EC Church, especially in the foreign countries, the denominations in foreign countries, especially in Japan, Mexico, Liberia, and Nepal. As he talked about them, and we heard much more about that later as our missions director came and talked to us also, expressing for us the many challenges that the faithful church faces today. Among them, of course, and he spent a lot of time on that, and later in conference spending a lot of time on debating and talking about that, is the issues on the same-sex marriages. And I just wanted to share you a couple of things that are on the bishop's heart, and I think that are on our heart as we think about what is going on in today's society, what is going on all around us, and the position that we have as an EC Church, a part of the denomination, the position that we have on the same-sex marriages that seem to be becoming so popular in our society today. Let me just read a little bit to you from his report, a highlight that I have. My friends, he says, as I read the scriptures, I am struck by the reality that we are living in Corinth. Think about how Paul and the historians describe it. They had so many places of worship that they decided it was up to each individual to believe whatever they wanted to believe. Right or wrong is relative. Prostitution is illegal and even encouraged. Heterosexual, homosexual, take your choice. The culture lives to feel good. It's all about feeling good. The people are intelligent, successful, comfortable, and morally corrupt. Isn't that where we live today also when we think about that, the conditions of Corinth at that time? It's in this atmosphere we await a ruling on the same-sex marriage by the United States Supreme Court. And he goes on to explain in the next several paragraphs why this decision by our nation's highest court is so important. And then he says, on all the issues of the church America has faced, the same-sex marriage may be the most testing. And we know we have entered a new world when the declared candidate for the presidency of the United States says laws have to be backed up with resources and political will, and deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed. Did you catch this couple words in there, just to condense it down to just 6 words? Religious beliefs have to be changed. Religious beliefs have to be changed. That's being stated by candidate for the presidency of the United States. The bishop adds a personal note there. He says, I, for one, as bishop, cannot and will not reinterpret God's Word based on the desires and pressure of the culture in which we live. And I think we can agree with that and put ourselves in that, and says that we here at Pequea Church, we as individuals, that we will not reinterpret God's Word based on the pressures and the culture in the society that we live in today. So we encourage the bishop taking a strong stand on this issue in different ways. We encourage the bishop to continue in that course. Of course, like I said, there's copies of that available. I encourage you to read the whole thing when you have time. Following that, it was time for a re-election of the bishop's position, and Bishop Hill was re-elected for another 5-year term. And then we go into the business sessions, and let me just give you a little bit of background. We received several weeks, maybe even a month before the conference, a packet of all the reports from all the different committees, and we are expected to read them before conference and by conference time as we come to the conference. Be ready with any questions or comments we might have on all the reports that are there. So throughout the 3 days, the bishop calls for the chairpersons from all these different committees that the EC Church has to come before the conference, and give some comments on his report. And then we all have the opportunity to either ask questions or make comments on all the reports that are presented, and then finally accept and pass the report as it is given. We spent a lot of time this year on the discipline. It is amendments every so many years, and I kind of forget, is it 5 years? I'm not sure what it is. Every 5 years, something like that. Every five years, the amendments the discipline is amended, and we gave approval to some issues that next year will be voted on, and they will be formally put into a new discipline that will come out. And most of the time on that was again spent on the issue of same-sex marriage. And in the end, the wording in this discipline was even strengthened against our stand against the same-sex marriage after a lot of debate. And might I just add on a personal note, we talked a lot about it here at conference and pre-conference meetings that we had. A lot of time to spend on it also, and I tell you, today we need to be in prayer for our pastors that are in the pulpits in the EC denomination. They're under a lot of pressure in the society that we live in, because I know for a fact, and some of the pastors talked about it openly, and they came, especially in the pre-conference meeting, very tearfully before the delegates and fellow pastors, very difficultly, very tearfully, talked about the position they're in when they have family members that are in this gay lifestyle and are asked to participate in or even to perform marriages between same-sex couples. And they face, of course, disciplinary action as they go against the discipline of the EC denomination if they participate, take part in these marriages. So it's very difficult. Pastors are having a very difficult time with that. We need to be in prayer for them as they attempt to live by what we believe in and what they really do believe in. So we spent a lot of time on that, and all the amendments were passed. Like I said, next year they will formally be changed in discipline. Wednesday evening closed with one of the highlights, ice cream social. Ice cream social. So we had a treat of ice cream, and yes, I had some ice cream. I had a lot of ice cream. Usually you get past years you got to dip your own ice cream. This year they dipped the ice cream for you, and they were large cups of ice cream. I had vanilla and peanut butter and vanilla, yes, with toppings on them. I felt very full that night. Bobby didn't eat all hers. Ice cream was too full, and of course maybe it didn't help that at lunchtime I had a little bit of cake and ice cream too. So that didn't help, and feeling rather full Wednesday evening. That's the reason I go to conference, just to eat. They do have a good food good food at conference, a big variety. Most of the next morning, Thursday morning, was spent on the covenant, the CIT, covenant implementation team. The covenant that was passed several years ago. Covenant was A team was formed several years ago to address the times that we're living in and changes that we will have to make. We've heard the phrase before, I've mentioned it before, that we have, as a denomination, we have to embrace reality. We have to embrace reality with what's going on. And several years ago, it was determined that to do nothing as a denomination, with the way that the denomination operates now, to do nothing, to continue going on just as it is, all we're going to do is have problems, severe problems in the years to come. So it's time to do something. We have to just embrace that. The hard decisions are going to have to be made so that we might survive and the denomination can survive into the coming years. Excuse me for a minute, I'm trouble now. Thank you, Mary Jane. We first, it ended up being 3 different votes. The first vote we did pass, and we did pass all 3, and I can tell you now, the results of all 3 of it was an overwhelming majority, and it's not the exact count every time, but roughly 170 votes yes and 20 votes no against all the 3 different votes that were taken. It was voted, of course, to change the denominational structure. We're moving to giving more decision-making power to the national ministry team and to our bishop. They will have more power, doing away with things like the conference ministers that are serving full-time now. We have 3 conference ministers. They will be part-time jobs while they also serve a church part-time and receive pay from the church as well as a little bit from the denomination for the work they continue to do as conference ministers. Many other changes taking place to reduce the operating expense of the denomination. One of the biggest areas that will reduce the operating expense of the denomination is the second vote when it did pass to move from the mandatory funding to voluntary funding, meaning things such as our camps, the School of Theology, the Historical Society, will no longer be funded will no longer receive funds from the denomination. Rather, they will be supported in a voluntary basis. Now, this doesn't take effect immediately, not 100%. It's a phase-in program over the next 5 years. There's a lot of discussion on that. Will they be able to survive? Will they not? And they will, at an October meeting, they will finalize, they'll be given the authority to finalize this plan. The plan will go forth to move to all voluntary funding instead of receiving help through the denominational fund, which comes through the ministry funds that we pay in, of course, every month. Perhaps the most difficult was concerning the retiree health insurance. We're all aware of what's happening in the health insurance world around us, what is happening there. And as Becky Regal came and talked to us about it, she talked about it all really starting about 10 years ago, going on, starting to become very different with all the new government regulations that are in effect, and that we cannot continue with the health insurance program to our retirees as we have in the past. And Becky had a very difficult time. Becky has a huge heart. She had a very difficult time in presenting this report. And I'm having a hard time too as I think about it tearfully. She talked about the 100 or so retired pastors that we have that use this fund and how it will affect them and her discussions with them and what it means to them. It was a very difficult decision to make. They will continue to work with our retired pastors and helping theirs. There is help available for those that really do need help, more than what they can afford in health insurance. There is help available. And she assured us that they will continue to help those. Something will be set up to work with them. But it will be phased out again, probably within the next 5 years, in retiree health insurance. And that all brings down the expenses of the denomination. And Thursday evening, and Friday morning also, we talked about missions. Mandy Sizemore, our Director of Missions, and the work that's going on, as we said, in our churches. We had with us this year leaders from a leader and his wife from our denomination, in Nepal. Made the trip over just for this conference, and it's Reverend Janga, if I pronounce his wife right, and his wife Mercy. And that's her name, Mercy. No last name, no first, one name, Mercy. And the time they had with customs, he said, to get her through customs with a person with just one name. So they were with us and talked to us as best they could. Had a difficult time understanding exactly everything that he said. But just to know, we know the difficult times have gone on in Nepal, and this family, this pastor and his wife and family were directly affected by the earthquake that took place there. Earthquakes, I should say, several of them. They themselves have 5 children and 8 foster children that live in their house. Their house was damaged so much in the earthquake that it is not livable. They're living temporarily. When they return to Nepal, which they'll be doing beginning of this coming week, they will need to be finding a house, moving into a new house. So it has been greatly affected. The church there, as well as the other churches that I mentioned, the other denominations, branches, are all flourishing and growing and very prosperous, have huge hearts, and it's very touching when our director of missions talks about how they are even helping each other. How Nepal would send funds to Liberia because of the crisis they're going through there. Liberia being perhaps poorer than Nepal. And Nepal, of course, is poor, but they would send funds to help the churches in Liberia. The churches in Mexico, as poor as they are, would send help and funds to the churches in Japan when they went through the tsunami several years ago. So the churches are helping each other, and it's quite a testimony, and they're growing. They're growing. As they grow, they have needs for pastors in these foreign countries, and as they grow, it seems the churches here in this area going down, kind of through the comment, perhaps they will be sending missionaries to us in the years to come as they continue to grow. So it's been a difficult time for the churches in the past 3 years. The problems they've had, Japan with the tsunami, Liberia with the Ebola crisis that they were going through, and Nepal with the earthquakes, but they continue to flourish in spite of all this. We had the memorial report that was given by Greg on, what was that, Thursday afternoon. Greg gave his memorial report as he does, and as I said before, it's always wonderful to see how it is received. Everyone is so reverent and listens to Greg's report as it lists deaths and gives a little history of all the pastors' wives, missionaries, lay delegates, and other people that the conference members are familiar with. His little report on each one of them. This year was over 31, I want to say, 30 or 31? 30 names on the report. So it was a long report that Greg gave, and did an excellent job, as he always does, in presenting this report. I come back with prayer cards. The chaplains were there. I have some prayer cards. I put them back. Remember our chaplains in prayer. Put them on your prayer list. It was always nice and good to meet with friends at the national conference. I always do that. I just mentioned Bill McElroy. I talked to him, his wife Judy. As we know, is going through a lot of difficult problems. And I was very glad to hear he said she has more good days than bad days right now. So we're glad for that. She's kind of stabilized a little bit, but still having a lot of different issues. It was good to see friends that were there, Keith, ones that have been here, Keith Miller, Barry Zimmerman, Teddy Rathman, Gordy, and Fred, our conference ministers, Mike Sigmund, Jeff Byerly, Wilmer Martin, are all there, all ones that have been here the past few years, and it's just all good to connect with all these again. And then, of course, we adopted or passed the stationing committee report, and on that report, of course, lists Jonathan Brown as the pastor here at Pequea. So beginning the first of next month, Jonathan will officially be our lead pastor here, and we will have Pastor Greg will be pastor emeritus. And someone made the comment, I forget who it was, how fortunate we are. We have both a senior and a junior pastor emeritus. A senior with Reverend Starr, and our junior pastor emeritus now with Reverend Dumick. So we're fortunate to have two fine pastor emeritus in our present, taking effect next month. Greg and Bobby will continue, of course, living in the parsonage. Of for the whatever, see what the future holds, but they will continue living in the past, parsonage as they had, and we're certainly glad, of course, to have them here with us. So that's the report as I had it. Thank you again for the privilege to go attend the conference. I mentioned to Jonathan if he wants to give a few comments on it, but I see on the proclaimer that is available, he has like a page and a half on the conference also. Read that. A lot more details than that, more than what I gave here. Repeat some of what I did say. Read that in the proclaimer of his report on the conference. So I invite if you have something to say, please share it with us. And once again, thank you for allowing me to represent you in the conference this year. Here.
Thank you very much, Wilmer, for that excellent report. It was a wonderful conference. A few of the things that stuck out to me were, first, just the overwhelming sense of unity. Even though we had a number of very controversial, very potentially divisive proposals, I was shocked at how relatively unanimous the support from all the voting delegates at National Conference was. I mean, that was a work to whatever one thinks of the proposals, the fact that we stuck together to that much of an extent. That's remarkable. The other thing that really stuck out to me were the sermons. We had some great sermons at National Conference, and the Episcopal address was fantastic, but we also got great sermons from all three of the conference ministers, as well as Randy Sizemore, our director of global ministries. All of them had powerful words from the Lord. If you happen to be one of those who follows the church's Facebook page, there are some quotes that I hope to share here in the future from each of those sermons that are very, very powerful. As Wilmer said, we'll be having copies of the Episcopal address made available out on the table. I'm hoping that for next week we can also get some copies of the Conference Digest for those who'd like a further look at what Wilmer was sharing. And also we had a couple of position papers that got approved. One was from the Leadership Commission about a proper theology of leadership within the EC Church, and the other one was from the Faith and Doctrine Commission. And they had a very deep position paper on the theology of marriage. It was a wonderful read about the reasonability of what we believe about marriage, and a good hard look at what the ramifications of our changing legal landscape could very well be. So I would highly recommend all of those resources. We hope to have them available very soon. So thank you again as a congregation for allowing us to go to conference and represent and experience so many spiritual riches to bring back